Which facts are solace? Story 1. You can talk to your pet rabbit by quickly pushing your lips downwards and upwards as if you were trying to look up your nose in a mirror. Do it quickly and you're chatting. It mimics the nose movements they make and you can see them wiggle their noses faster out of interest. Copy their rhythm and watch them talk back. Also, stomping your foot like they do as well as turning your back on them when annoyed is understood too. If they have chewed something they shouldn't have, you can stomp one foot and turn around with your arms folded. Have a look over your shoulder to make sure they see you. They should come to check on you, and if they don't, stomp and make sure they see your back is turned. Eventually they get it and come over to make sure you're okay. Then let the nose wiggling commence. You can expect them to do the same to you as well, like when you clean their enclosure. Story 2. Nurse here. If you're having a general anesthetic for a routine operation and worried about dying while under, please be aware there are about 7 different levels of stuff we can do to bring you back. So if the thing we normally do doesn't work, we've got Plan B, then we've got Plan C, D, E, F, G, and H. And we rarely need to even go to Plan C, let alone the rest. It's ridiculously rare for you to never wake up from a routine op. Of course, it happens occasionally, but for every case you've heard about it happening, there's thousands of identical operations where it didn't. I've been qualified for 15 years and it's literally never happened anywhere I've worked. Story 3. Crows will let other crows know if you're a good person. Feeding a crow in your backyard can quickly become many crows over time since the rumor spreads, and nearby crows in your area will know you as one they like. They can also be known to be protective of you and even bring you gifts. Suffice to say, crows are one of the most intelligent creatures on the planet and they are truly underrated. Story 4. The time I stood up in Spanish class while wearing a long skirt, but the skirt was stuck in the chair leg and didn't stand up with me. I was in the front row and flashed all of the Spanish class. The teacher said something in Spanish that I didn't understand at the time, but everyone laughed and I later found out she said something about me having ants in my pants. The shame and horror never leaves my body. To this day, I don't stand up while wearing a long skirt unless I'm holding my skirt making sure it's coming up with me. But I outdid myself in college when in a boring Shakespeare class I raised my hand and asked what fellatio meant after we read it. Some guy said, "Well, I bet she doesn't have a boyfriend," and I could have actually died. The teacher was mortified for me and I truly blacked out after that and don't remember how I ever went back. Story 5. Your pets will forgive you if you accidentally step on them. This happened to me a few days ago. I was walking around, kind of in a rush, and I didn't notice my dog was standing there watching. I accidentally stepped on his paw. He let out a squeal, and then he growled and kind of lunged at me, but only to tap his paws on my thighs almost like a "what the f*** did you do that for?" Seconds later, he got back on the ground and started wagging his tail wildly and forcefully. I pet him and apologized profusely, and of course he got happy again. I've noticed that whenever I accidentally hurt him, it rarely happens, only a few times, he starts wagging his tail like crazy and looks up at me making eye contact. I swear, I feel like I can read his mind sometimes. He looks at me as if to say, "We are still friends, right? You still love me, right?" Story 6. Switzerland has implemented a scheme Time Bank, which is an old age assistance program under which people can volunteer to look after the elderly who require assistance, and then the number of hours they spend with or caring for seniors gets deposited in their individual Social Security account. Eventually, when the volunteer reaches that old age when he or she requires support, this time bank can help them by providing time-based services which include consultations, babysitting, hairdressing, gardening, tutoring, or any other time-consuming job in addition to being looked after by a volunteer as well. About 34 countries are trying to apply this scheme. Very wholesome and humane. Story 7. You know how dogs get down in front with their butt in the air when it's playtime? That's called a play bow, and it's a common signal for play in the animal kingdom. A guy once watched as a bear wandered up to his sled dogs, and after the animals investigated one another, they all kind of did the play bow and proceeded to romp around the area having a blast. They'd repeat the motion occasionally to confirm with each other that yes, they were still playing, and in the case of the bear, to signal to these new friends that mauling was not in the plans for today. The human stayed away and watched from afar because 1. He was surprised the bear did not instinctually murderize the dogs, and 2. He didn't want to be injured if he disrupted playtime himself to rescue them. Story 8. Getting fired isn't the end of the world. I got a second chance after the disciplinary meeting. Suspension, then I go back to work. Boss was trying to rile me up that my burnout was planned and that she would not accept my terms working for less days or with limitations and restrictions. I'm pretty sure when I go back to work in the old people's home, I will be placed in the toxic area until I resign on my own accord. So yeah, when I find new work and get my benefit from the insurance, I'll formally resign. Also, it's going to be marked on my record. Like I care, I will gladly explain the circumstances to my future employer as to how a long-term employee got crazy for one day from stress after working there for more than 2 years. They can't even hold new and old employees. Story 9. You can get over your regrets. If you have regret about something, it means you have identified that whatever you did was wrong, which also means you're no longer that version of yourself. You've learned and evolved, you're a different and better person now. So forgive yourself and let it go. Story 10. It's never too late to start a new hobby or sport, regardless of what you may think. I started figure skating at the age of 18, knowing barely anything. I'm 22 now and placed 5th and 4th at my first 2 competitions in my events. I'm gaining flexibility by the day and gaining new skills all the time. Cooking, baking, painting, skating, music instruments, all of it. There is never an age where you cannot get into these things. Some might cost a bit more than others, but if you want to try something and have the means to do so, you can. Want to learn how to make muffins and cakes? There are step-by-step YouTube videos. Want to learn to skateboard? Same thing. We only get one chance at life, so never feel bad about trying something new. Story 11. Inhaling twice through your nose followed by a long exhale from your mouth is proven to level the amount of oxygen and carbon dioxide in your body. The first inhale dilates the lungs, the second inhale dilates them even more, pulling the carbon dioxide out of your bloodstream. So when you exhale, you're breathing out the maximum level of carbon dioxide in your body. You should do this when you can't stop thinking or when you're stressed. Story 12. Cancer has effectively been cured. A recent experimental study had a 100% chance of curing terminal rectal cancer. No tumors were found even after 25 months. Years of research until this applies to all forms of cancer, but a huge beacon of hope nonetheless. The bacteria that causes many cases of IBS was just discovered 2 years ago, so a treatment is also here now. There are geniuses currently working on advancing every single field of science, and they're winning. As many flat earther Scientologist Karens there is still very much reason to be optimistic about the future of humanity. Story 13. The little strip of stores by my neighborhood has a supermarket as the main store. It is decorated like a widow's walk. There were always 5 or 6 huge crows around. One day, I was driving in and noticed the crows flying in a circle and just screaming. I don't know how else to describe it. One kept darting down and then back up. They were going crazy. When I got close enough, I saw that one of the crows had been hit by a car but was somehow still alive. Its friends were concerned about it. As I got out of the car, I went as close as I could and began to ask people to help me figure out what to do. The bird didn't make it. There's no way it could have sustained those injuries and lived. I don't know how it lived as long as it did. I was in tears. The sounds the other birds were making were unmistakably sounds of grief and worry. I've never heard anything like it. To this day, it's still one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever seen or heard. Story 14. Cheetahs are very shy animals, so some zoos give them support dogs like those for humans. It's the cutest thing ever. The bigger reason for this is that cheetahs' vision likes to hyperfocus. In a crowd like ones at the zoo, they would get anxious looking at each individual and would try to analyze each person, which can be very stressful for them. Dogs are very good at reading groups and crowds. They pair a dog with the cheetah to rely on emotionally. If the dog is calm, the cheetah will trust them that there's nothing to worry about from those crowds. How do zoos prevent the cheetah from killing the dog? They're typically introduced at a very young age and imprint on each other. Cheetahs are also not naturally driven to kill dogs as prey. A cheetah could kill a dog, but typically a cheetah would never hunt a dog in the wild. If it was in its territory, or if a dog appeared hurt by itself, a cheetah might go for an opportunistic kill, but those are special circumstances. The most likely situation you'd see in the wild would be if they were hunting the same prey and they fought over a kill. Story 15. My whole childhood I was overweight, awkward, and bullied and beat up relentlessly. Had abusive parents and sister at home, no sign of happiness. I'm 38 now and have a great job, smoking hot wife, and 3 amazing kids. If it could happen to me, it could happen to anyone, so don't give up on yourself. Story 16. I work in drug research for neuropathic pain. There are new drugs being developed that can treat pain without ever crossing the blood-brain barrier. This will eliminate negative side effects like tolerance, addiction, tremors, schizophrenia, etc. Most people under 40 will receive this type of medication before they die, and it will be a huge advancement for society. Drug design and drug research are progressing orders of magnitude faster than we were even a decade ago. The future of drug research is incredibly exciting. I feel confident in saying that the majority of people under 30 right now will live well into their 80s, and people under 20 can expect to live into their 90s barring some life-altering event. Story 17. Majority of spiders won't kill you or even bite you. Spider bites tend to happen because the spider is being actively squished, which makes it want to fight back. I've held many random spiders: southern house spider, garden spider, wolf spider, cellar spider, even a brown recluse on accident once, and only bit once in my 20 years. It was my fault though. It was a little jumping spider and I was trying to multitask while holding him and accidentally squeezed him a bit. The bite was like a bee sting. I didn't die. That is to say though, only spiders I've had concerns about is the black widow and brown recluse, but generally they won't kill you unless you keep them and get bit multiple times. Babies and elderly are probably the ones who should be scared of these though. Story 18. When I was a kid in middle school, somehow my uncle ended up with these 2 abandoned babyish sized squirrels. One of them had apparently fallen and her back legs were paralyzed. Sam and Sue. He brought them home and nursed them. They stuck around together for quite a while. He had a way for them to get outside and stay protected while enjoying the sunshine. One day, Sam escaped. My uncle tried to lure him back, to no avail. So, there was just Sue. For whatever reason, my mom ended up with Sue. She would ride around on my mom's shoulders as she did whatever. She would sit in her lap and get scratches and pets. She had this huge thing inside my dad built in a guest room where she could have her own space. We had that squirrel for a long time. My dad eventually built a large enclosure thing for Sue outside because my mom thought she would like being out more doing squirrel-like stuff. She didn't last any time. Mom took her outside one day. This was one of the first times Sue had gone to the outside enclosure. Went back an hour later and she had passed away. It was awful. Everyone cried for days. That little squirrel was such a good friend. Story 19. Death is inevitable for all things. While this may sound morbid and not very reassuring, this thought always calms my panic attacks when I become lucid of my own mortality. I can look up at the night sky and see the smattering of stars, specks of light in various hues of red, white, and blue twinkling in the vastness of our universe, and thinking to myself, these balls of plasma will also cease to be. The universe will grow colder and stretch to a point where there are too little concentrations of gas, gravity, and heat to create new stars. One by one, the stars will disappear as death claims every last one until there is nothing left that gives off visible light. Just ice and rock drifting in the void until it's sucked up by the millions of black holes that emerge from the graves of supermassive stars, and even those will evaporate. It's then that I realize even if I was somehow granted a wish to be young and immortal, I wouldn't want that. It might be great for a few hundred or thousand years, but eventually it would creep on you. That sickly feeling that everything will end except you, that you will be the sole object left in the universe that death's embrace cannot save as you endure madness in the umbra of eternity, begging to end. So, when considering this alternative, death is a blessing.